Melatonin, as you know, is produced 1 hour after sunset. We start to manufacture melatonin. Little by little, it increases. At a certain moment, it transforms into that valetonin, and this somehow induces sleep. It is very important to regulate the biorhythm of the person 2001. You know that the biorhythm is made up on one hand by cortisol, which dominates during the day, and on the other hand by melatonin at night. The king of the biorhythm is precisely melatonin. This is very important because a group of researchers was recently awarded a Nobel Prize for their work on biorhythms, and they say that almost all the diseases we suffer from today are related to a loss of biorhythm. For example, autoimmune diseases have an advanced melatonin biorhythm, while people with depression or cancer also have a delayed biorhythm. And that, as it is already known to be the case, can be manipulated by administering melatonin at a specific hour or another. Some authors also say that it has an anti-migraine effect. There you have the pineal gland. Well, we have already seen the synthesis of melatonin from tryptophan. And this is the chronobiology of neurotransmitters. In the morning, we experience a peak in dopamine, which is the project of physical and mental awakening. And these would be the neurotransmitters of awakening. In the afternoon, we have the peak of serotonin between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m., which acts as the brake. Serotonin inhibits the excessive activity of other neurotransmitters. And at night, through sleep, we experience a peak between 2 and 3 a.m., which induces that intense relaxation, a relaxed and pleasant sleep. Well, let's look at clinical aspects. The effects of dopamine. Dopamine, as we mentioned before, stimulates motivation, pleasure, attention, concentration, and wakefulness. That is why we need a good protein intake and few carbohydrates in that morning breakfast, because if we introduce carbohydrates, we can divert tyrosine to another metabolic pathway, which would hinder the production of that brain dopamine. And serotonin helps us with sleep, mood, appetite, temperature, and behavior. So, in summary, dopamine initiates action. It's like having a car. We open the car. Norepinephrine accelerates the action. And serotonin acts as the brake, because we can't be super active all day. We know well that nutrition and diet play a very important role in the proper maintenance of our mental and brain health. And as Hippocrates said, if we manage to provide the right food and the appropriate exercise to each person, we can significantly improve their overall health. Notice that from Homo sapiens to the agricultural revolution, 5,000 generations passed to transition from this situation to this one, and in just 5 generations, we have moved to this situation in the Industrial Revolution. Therefore, we have transitioned from Homo sanus to Homo obesus to Homo infirmus. Remember that the Paleolithic genes are the ones we have today, and we have had a variation of 0.01% in these genes, which is to say, almost nothing. And this is because we know that if we consume certain foods such as excess fructose, a lack of antioxidants, the high caloric density of many foods, a sedentary lifestyle, excess purines, the imbalance between omega-6 and omega-3, and excess saturated fats, all of this leads us to these obesity problems that consequently lead us to metabolic syndrome. And metabolic syndrome can be one of the most important causes of death from cardiovascular disease. Well, we have said that the gut is the second brain, and we find 100 million neurons with 20 types of neurotransmitters. Permanent connection between the enteric nervous system and the central nervous system. Notice that when we say that nerves are not good for anything, they are also not good for the balance of the digestive system. And we can say that the gut is the garbage dump of waste, but it is also the garbage dump of emotions. We see that emotional stress, fear, anger, anxiety, and frustration increase sympathetic tone and decrease parasympathetic tone. This results in an increase in norepinephrine and a decrease in acetylcholine, which leads to a reduction in peristalsis, a decrease in secretions, and of course all of this results in problems with slow digestion, acidic fermentation, putrefaction, and consequently leads to issues with constipation, self-intoxication from fecal matter, increased intestinal permeability, and immune reactions that cause an increase in free radicals, which also leads to intestinal inflammation. Once someone asked Buddha what a wise man was, and Buddha replied that a wise man was one who had his gut and digestive system in perfect working condition. And he was not mistaken, because if everything works well, the nutrients reach the brain properly. Those neurotransmitters arrive adequately and enhance your mental capacity. By the way, do you know that the IQ is declining in Spain, Europe, and the USA? Have you heard? The IQ is declining in the European and American areas. And do you know why? It's because of iodine. So we know that the thyroid controls practically everything in the body. It controls neuronal speed, controls the mitochondria, controls mitogenesis, controls the heart, and also controls body temperature. It has been observed that in Spain and parts of Europe, we consume chlorine, fluoride, bromine, and little iodine through drinking water. So when it comes to producing thyroid hormones, instead of having thyroxine, you have tetrafluorothyronine or tetrabromothyronine, but that is not a thyroid hormone. It does not have the same effect as thyroxine. However, Japan and other countries in the Asian region consume high amounts of seaweed that provide iodine, thus saturating all the receptors with iodine. When fluoride, bromine, or chlorine arrives, they find no place to bind, and therefore do not generate or produce these abnormal hormones that should be activated by iodine. I must remember that in Asian countries, the IQ is currently around 115, while we are at 95 or 94. Well, remember the lipids and the brain. Notice the structural similarity between a walnut and the brain. They are practically very similar. So cholesterol, as we mentioned before, can be an atherogenic factor if too high, but too low levels significantly affect our mental and brain health because it is part of the brain's cytoskeleton, and the brain produces 30% of the total cholesterol. The brain does not trust the liver. The brain manufactures and produces its own cholesterol.